The Day Daddy Disappeared, Part 1, The Airport. The fluorescent lights of Chicago O'Hare International Airport buzzed overhead as Emma and Lily stood perfectly still, like two small statues in matching yellow dresses. Their little hands clutched the handle of their yellow suitcase so tightly that their knuckles had turned white. Around them, the world kept moving. Businessmen rushing past with briefcases, families laughing and hugging, announcements echoing through the cavernous terminal. But for the two 6-year-old twins, time had stopped. "Emma, I'm scared," Lily whispered, her voice barely audible above the chaos of the airport. A tear rolled down her cheek, leaving a glistening trail. Emma squeezed her sister's hand. She wanted to cry too, but she remembered what Mommy always said. "You're 3 minutes older, Emma. That makes you the big sister. Sometimes Lily needs you to be brave." So Emma swallowed hard, pushing down the lump in her throat, and tried to smile even though her heart was pounding in her chest. "Daddy will come back," Emma said, though her voice wavered with uncertainty. He promised he was just getting juice boxes, but deep down, even at 6 years old, Emma knew something was terribly wrong. It had been 45 minutes since their father had walked away, telling them to stay right there by the big window overlooking the runways. "Don't move an inch," he'd said, crouching down to their level and looking into their eyes with an intensity that had frightened Emma, though she didn't understand why. "I'll be right back. 5 minutes. Can you count to 65 times?" They had nodded eagerly, not realizing they were agreeing to something much more sinister than a simple wait. Part 2, the beginning 3 days earlier. Everything had seemed normal, or as normal as life could be after Mommy and Daddy's divorce. It was Friday afternoon when Marcus pulled up to their modest suburban home in Naperville, Illinois. Sarah, their mother, stood on the porch with her arms crossed, watching warily as his sleek black sedan rolled into the driveway. "Girls, Daddy's here!" she called inside, and Emma and Lily came running out with their little backpacks bouncing on their shoulders. "Hey, my princesses," Marcus said, scooping them both into his arms and spinning them around. They giggled, their auburn pigtails flying through the air. For a moment, Sarah allowed herself to smile. Maybe this co-parenting thing could work after all. "Remember, Marcus, they need to be back by Sunday evening. Emma has a dentist appointment Monday morning," Sarah reminded him, her tone gentle but firm. Of course, Marcus said, but he didn't quite meet her eyes. "We're just going to visit my mom upstate. The girls love their grandma." Sarah hesitated. Something felt off, but she couldn't put her finger on what. Marcus had been acting strange during their last few conversations. Distant, evasive, almost desperate in the way he'd insisted on having the girls this weekend. But the custody agreement gave him every other weekend, and she didn't want to be the kind of ex-wife who made everything difficult. "Okay," she said finally. "Girls, be good for Daddy, okay? And call me before bed." "We will, Mommy," they chorused, blowing her kisses as Marcus buckled them into their car seats. Sarah watched the car disappear down the street, that uneasy feeling still gnawing at her gut. She pulled out her phone and almost called her lawyer, but then shook her head. She was being paranoid. Marcus loved those girls. He would never do anything to hurt them. She was wrong. Part 3, the lie unfolds. Instead of driving north toward his mother's house, Marcus drove east. The girls didn't notice at first. They were too busy playing I Spy and singing along to their favorite songs on the radio. But after an hour, Emma started to wonder. "Daddy, are we almost at Grandma's?" she asked. "Change of plans, sweetheart," Marcus said, his voice too bright, too cheerful. "We're going on an adventure, a surprise trip." "Where?" Lily asked excitedly. "It's a surprise," he repeated, and that was all he would say. When the airport came into view, the girls' excitement reached a fever pitch. An airplane! They were going on an airplane! Emma pressed her face against the window, trying to see the planes taking off and landing in the distance. But Marcus's hands were shaking on the steering wheel. His jaw was clenched tight, and sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool October air. He was about to do something he'd never imagined he'd be capable of. He was about to run. 6 months ago, Marcus had been on top of the world. He'd had a successful career as a financial advisor, a beautiful family, a house in the suburbs, the American dream. But then the market crash hit his firm hard. He'd made some bad investments, borrowed from the wrong people trying to cover his losses, and suddenly he was drowning in debt he couldn't possibly repay. The divorce had cleaned him out financially. The house, most of their savings, child support payments he could barely afford. It had all piled up until he could barely breathe. And then came the threats. The men he owed money to weren't the type to wait patiently for payment plans. They'd made it clear, pay up or face consequences. So Marcus had made a plan. He had a friend in Mexico, someone who owed him a favor, someone who could help him disappear and start over. He'd sold everything he had left, scraped together just enough for plane tickets. And he'd made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He would take his daughters with him. In his desperate, fractured mind, it made sense. Sarah was barely making ends meet as a teacher. He could give the girls a better life somewhere new, away from the cold Chicago winters, away from the memories of their broken family. They'd be happy. He'd make them happy. He didn't let himself think about Sarah, about what this would do to her. He couldn't. If he did, he might not. Go through with it. And he had to go through with it. He had no choice. At least, that's what he told himself. Part 4, the terminal. At the airport, Marcus had moved quickly, purchasing tickets with cash at the counter. One-way flights to Cancun, Mexico, departing in 3 hours. He'd chosen a route with a long layover, multiple connections, anything to make them harder to trace. The girls had been thrilled, jumping up and down when he told them they were going to a beach. With palm trees? Lily had asked, her eyes wide. Lots of palm trees, Marcus promised, and we can build sandcastles every day. But as they sat in the terminal waiting for their flight, reality began to creep in through the cracks of Marcus's desperate plan. He watched his daughters coloring in their activity books, completely innocent, completely trusting, and something inside him started to break. What was he doing? These were his babies, his little girls, and he was kidnapping them. That's what this was, kidnapping. He was taking them away from their mother, from their home, from their school and friends and everything familiar. He was making them fugitives before they even understood what the word meant. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Sarah. She'd already called twice and sent 4 text messages. He hadn't answered any of them. What could he possibly say? Another buzz. A text message. Marcus, the girls haven't called. Please have them call me, they promised. Then another. Marcus? Is everything okay? Then, you're scaring me. Please respond. Marcus felt sick. He stood up abruptly, his legs unsteady beneath him. Girls, I need to make a phone call. Stay right here, okay? Don't talk to anyone. I'll be right back. He walked toward the restrooms, his heart hammering in his chest. He locked himself in a stall and leaned against the cold metal wall, trying to breathe, trying to think. His phone buzzed again. And again. Sarah. Always Sarah. The woman he'd loved, the woman he'd married, the woman he'd disappointed in so many ways. The woman who'd given him those 2 perfect little girls, waiting out there in the terminal. What the hell was he doing? Marcus looked at himself in the bathroom mirror after he finally emerged from the stall. His face was pale, his eyes wild and red-rimmed. He looked like a stranger, like someone he didn't recognize. When had he become this person? When had he become someone capable of this? He thought about his daughters, about their small hands and their trusting eyes. He thought about Emma, always trying to be so brave and grown up. He thought about Lily, with her endless questions and her infectious giggle. He thought about how they'd asked for their mommy at bedtime last night, and how he'd promised they could call her tomorrow, knowing tomorrow would never come. And he thought about Sarah, probably frantic by now, probably calling everyone they knew, maybe even calling the police. He imagined her face when she realized what he'd done, the betrayal and terror she would feel. Marcus pulled out his phone. His flight was boarding in 2 hours. He could still do this. He could still get on that plane, start over, give his girls a new life. But at what cost? Part 5, the choice. Marcus stood in that airport bathroom for 20 minutes, his entire future hanging in the balance. And then he made a choice. He walked out of the bathroom, but he didn't turn right toward the terminal where his daughters waited. He turned left toward the exit. His legs moved like they belonged to someone else, carrying him through the automatic doors and out into the cool October air. He told himself he would come back. He told himself he just needed to clear his head, just needed a moment to think without those innocent blue eyes watching him. He told himself a lot of things. But Marcus knew the truth. He was a coward. He couldn't go through with kidnapping his daughters, but he also couldn't face going back to his old life, to the debt and the threats, and the failure. So he was choosing the third option. He was running away alone. He flagged down a cab. "Downtown Chicago," he said, his voice hollow. Inside the terminal, Emma checked the big clock on the wall for the 100th time. Her daddy had said 5 minutes. She'd counted to 65 times just like he'd asked. Then she'd done it again, and again, and again. "Emma, where is he?" Lily asked, her voice small and frightened now. The initial excitement of being at the airport had worn off, replaced by a growing sense that something was very wrong. "I don't know," Emma admitted, and this time she couldn't stop her own tears from falling. A woman in an airport uniform noticed them finally. 2 small girls, alone, crying, clutching a yellow suitcase. She approached carefully, her face concerned. "Sweethearts, are you okay? Where are your parents?" Emma looked up at her with those big blue eyes, now red and puffy from crying. "Our daddy flew away without us," she whispered. "Why are we alone?" Part 6, the aftermath. The airport security team found Sarah's contact information quickly. Marcus had left their emergency information in the front pocket of the suitcase, as if some part of him had known all along that he wouldn't go through with it. Sarah received the call 45 minutes after Marcus had walked out of that terminal, and she made the drive from Naperville to O'Hare in record time, her heart in her throat the entire way. When she burst into the airport security office, Emma and Lily launched themselves at her, sobbing. "Mommy! Mommy, Daddy left us! He said he'd come back, but he didn't come back." Sarah held them both, tears streaming down her own face, unable to speak. The security officer gently explained what they knew. The girls had been found alone in Terminal 3. Their father had apparently abandoned them. They had tickets for a flight to Cancun that never boarded. "We're treating this as a potential parental abduction case," the officer said quietly, as a female colleague tried to distract the girls with coloring books. "We've notified the Chicago PD. Do you have any idea where he might have gone?" Sarah shook her head, numb. She couldn't process it. Marcus had tried to kidnap their daughters. Marcus had bought plane tickets to Mexico. Marcus had abandoned them in an airport like pieces of luggage. Who was this man she'd married? Who was this stranger wearing her ex-husband's face? The investigation unfolded quickly over the following days. Police discovered Marcus's debts, his desperate financial situation, his plans to flee the country. They found his car in the airport parking lot, abandoned. Security footage showed him leaving the terminal alone, getting into a cab. But Marcus himself seemed to have vanished into thin air. Part 7, the questions at night. Back home in their familiar beds, Emma and Lily couldn't sleep. Sarah sat between their twin beds in the darkness, holding both of their hands, trying to find words to explain something she didn't understand herself. "Mommy, why did Daddy leave us?" Lily asked, her voice breaking Sarah's heart into 1,000 pieces. "I don't know, baby," Sarah whispered honestly. "Sometimes grown-ups make really bad choices. Sometimes they get scared or confused, and they do things that don't make sense. Did we do something wrong?" Emma asked. "Is that why he left?" "No," Sarah said firmly, squeezing their hands. No, you girls did nothing wrong, nothing at all. This is not your fault. Do you hear me? This is not about you. Daddy has his own problems, his own issues, and he made a terrible choice. But you did nothing wrong." "Will he come back?" Lily wondered. Sarah didn't know how to answer that. Part of her hoped the police would find him, arrest him, hold him accountable for what he'd tried to do. But another part of her, the part that remembered the man she'd once loved, grieved for him, for the desperation that must have driven him to this. "I don't know," she said, finally. "But I promise you this, I will never leave you. I will always be here, always. You can count on me." The girls finally drifted off to sleep around midnight, emotionally exhausted. Sarah stayed awake, sitting on the floor between their beds, watching them breathe in the darkness. Her babies, her precious girls. How close she'd come to losing them. The next morning, Detective Martinez came by the house. They'd found more security footage. Marcus getting into a cab at O'Hare, the cab dropping him off at Union Station, and then nothing. He'd paid cash for everything, left his phone in the cab, disappeared completely. "I'm sorry," Detective Martinez said. "We're still looking, but these cases can be difficult. If someone really wants to disappear—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Part 8. Healing weeks turned into months. Autumn gave way to winter, winter to spring. The police investigation went cold. Marcus's credit cards were never used, no activity on his bank accounts, no sightings, no trace. It was as if he'd simply ceased to exist. Emma and Lily started therapy, working through the abandonment, the confusion, the fear. They had nightmares about airports, about being left behind, about yellow suitcases. Emma became clingy, afraid to let Sarah out of her sight. Lily stopped talking for 2 weeks, withdrawing into herself, but slowly, painfully, they began to heal. Sarah took them to the park on Saturdays. She read them stories every night. She tucked them in and reminded them every single day that she loved them, that she would never leave them, that they were safe. She built a fortress of routine and reliability around them, brick by brick, day by day. Their teacher at school was understanding, giving them extra attention and grace as they worked through their trauma. Their grandmother, Sarah's mother, moved in to help, providing another layer of stability and love. And gradually the smiles returned, the laughter, the light in their eyes. Their 7th birthday, Emma and Lily blew out the candles on their cake, and for the first time in months, they seemed genuinely happy. They were still healing, still scarred by what their father had done, but they were resilient in the way children can be. That night, as Sarah tucked them in, Emma looked up at her with those serious blue eyes. "Mommy, I don't think Daddy is coming back," she said quietly. Sarah's heart clenched. "No, sweetheart, I don't think so either." "That's okay," Emma said. "We have you, and Grandma, and each other. That's enough." Sarah kissed her forehead, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Yes, baby, that's more than enough. That's everything." Epilogue, 5 years later. Emma and Lily are 11 now. They're in 6th grade, thriving, surrounded by friends and love and stability. They still sometimes think about that day at the airport, still sometimes wonder where their father went or why he left them. But it doesn't consume them anymore. It's just a sad chapter in their story, not the whole story. They've learned that people can disappoint you, that even people who are supposed to love you can make terrible choices. But they've also learned about resilience, about the strength that comes from surviving something hard, about the fierce, unbreakable bond between sisters. Sarah never remarried, never even dated. She poured all her love into her daughters, into giving them the stable, secure childhood they deserved. The 3 of them became their own little family, complete in themselves. Sometimes late at night, Sarah wonders about Marcus. She wonders if he's alive, if he thinks about the daughters he abandoned, if he regrets it. But mostly, she doesn't think about him at all. He made his choice, and she's made hers, to keep moving forward, to keep building a beautiful life for her girls, to prove that love doesn't abandon, doesn't leave, doesn't walk away. The yellow dresses are packed away now in a box in the attic, along with the memories of that terrible day. But Emma and Lily still have the yellow suitcase. Sarah offered to replace it, to get them something new without such painful associations, but they refused. "It reminds us," Emma said. "Of what?" Sarah asked. "That we're strong," Lily answered. "That we survived, that we have each other." And really, Sarah thought, what more could anyone need? The end.